Hola! Welcome to Blue Abroad, the teams, and I'm joined by my usual guest host, and we've got a new sexy scroller just for you, Leg Dog. The
Oh, baby.
Leg Dog, the legend that is fantasy football expert, stat guru, and also part-time rapper. How are you going, Leg Dog?
I'm very well, Pommy. Very well. Let's keep the rapping on the down low, I reckon, mate. But other than that, no, it's good. How are you?
I'm good, mate. I mean, I'll give you a little spoiler. At some point this year, a clip of that will come up. Just so you know, I'm not even joking.
Mate, that rap video. I mean, we're already off topic, but that rap video is how I ended up with a career in sports media. Like, it all started there. Like, no joke. Someone saw it, said, "Do you want to write on jockreynolds.com.au?" And now here we are. So we got. But let's talk footy.
Well, we've got a big game, haven't we, this week? Port Adelaide. And bit of team news before the final one drops. Scott Lysett is out. And I was going to go back through the archives because there is a famous clip of the last time we played Port and they had Lysett out where I quoted that Laddams is an overrated hack and anyone can average 35 hit-outs in Sample. I'd average 40. And he proceeded to be Brodie Grundy. So Sam Hayes is a lot to come in. And what do you think about that? Is that any omens for you?
Well, I do believe in omens, so yeah, I'm actually quite scared, to be honest, Paul. But no, it should be good. I mean, they've confirmed Pito is going to come back in. I'm assuming they're not lying to us. The teams will drop shortly, and in theory, we should have the dominance in the ruck. But I reckon we've said that a couple of times this year, and it's not been the case. I reckon the Hawthorn game, and then last week Pito was laid out, but you know, we should have the dominance in that area, given Hayes has never played at AFL level. But I've been proven wrong before, just as we were last week when I guaranteed her. What did we guarantee? Like a 4-goal win? So,
mate, we were bad last week, let's be honest. Let's be honest. We got it wrong last week. But the teams, just while that is coming in, the teams have been officially announced, and Carlton have sprung one selection surprise with Nooms coming into the side. So Carlton have gone Zach Williams, Lewis Young, Sam Doherty, Adam Sard, Wheater Parks, Walsh, Hewitt, Nooms, Owies, Kerno, Martin, Fisher, Mackay, Silvani, Pitternet, Chera, and Setterfield with your interchange bench. Cottrell, Kennedy, Durden, and Newman. So Fogarty, O'Brien, and De Koning are the changes from last week. So initial thoughts in the comments, and over to you, Leg Dog. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, well, so I don't think Jack Nunes is a total surprise. I think the wing, we lack a bit of depth. He's kicked some goals in the VFL this year. I don't think that's a huge surprise. Cottrell as well. Another one where he's performed well and been rewarded. But I think the big news for me is the man that we highlighted last week, Tom De Koning, been omitted. And I think it's a smart move. I don't think he'd been, as we talked about last week, I don't think he'd been contributing enough. And it certainly showed on the weekend. And Pito is by far my number one ruck selection for the Blues. Before we dissect it more, Pom, I'll just read out the ins and outs for Port Adelaide. Coming in, they've got Allir, who normally dominates us, Jeremy Finlayson, Robbie Gray, who will kick 17 goals against us, Sam Hayes, who's replacing Lysett first game. Out for them goes Jed McKentry, Lockie Jones, Ollie Wines. That's a big one in the midfield. Sam Mays and Scott Lysett for them. So what are your initial thoughts on this, Pom? There's a couple of surprises.
Well, I mean, for me, I think, firstly, we did our VFL wrap with the wonderful Paolo on the Pom and Oz channel. We did actually mention Nooms and Cottrell, and I just did my preview as well, and we talked a little bit about we need to get the ball away. So as Saint says here, outside run is pivotal. It's what's killing Carlton. So I really do like the fact that they've really earmarked outside run as something that you've got to do. This is a tough game for Carlton because Port, when they're playing well and even when they're playing shit, close off the corridor. So Port's side, no surprise to me. I think they've gone with best available. But I really do like what Carlton have done here. I do think that Setterfield gets that chance to float on the ball, where I particularly think he's a better footballer anyway, as demonstrated by his new loopy handball he's brought into the game recently. And to be fair, I'm not a big fan of Cottrell, and I'm not a big fan of Nunes moving forward, but I do accept that these two have been absolutely phenomenal in the VFL and deserve their chance. And I think they offer more than Fogg, to be honest. I think they offer more. I think O'Brien's stiff, but I do think, looking at these two here, it's a big opportunity for them. And Dow and Stocker now, another week.
Yeah, look, I think if Cripps plays, O'Brien stays in the side. They've named Will Setterfield on the ball. So obviously we know previously he's been a half decent inside player. The outside game hasn't worked super well this year. He's been okay, but was really bad on the weekend. I reckon if Cripps plays, O'Brien stays in this team, but with Cripps out, they've shuffled it around and Setters will get some time on ball, and maybe it'll be what he needs to kick his game into gear. And if it doesn't work, we know Paddy Dow has been knocking the door down in the reserves. So I think it's just some interesting jostling for positions. I agree. I think Lachie O'Brien's a bit stiff, but at the moment, Nunes and Cottrell are in better form than him. So stiff for him, but I like what they're doing. And Luke Parks, let's talk about him. I said last week that I thought he was a little ways off, but you were pretty confident he'd make his way into the team pretty soon. What have you seen about his game in the twos, and what can we expect for him versus, say, a Lachie Plowman?
I think the big thing for me with Parks, and one thing that I've always been a big fan of Mr. Luke as well. He's been a personal favourite of mine since we've traded for him, since we've got him in, really. And his movement off the ball is impeccable. But what has really impressed me is his ability to really hit targets now. That's something that he's gone away and he's worked damn hard on. That was probably the knock on him last couple of years, but he's really done that. And he's playing, I think, when you look, and I want to talk a bit about our transition. Transition is the thing that everyone is complaining about at the moment. If you pick up a paper, Carlton's transition is the worst in the league. We need to shut up shop. Voss is a fraud hiding behind his contested numbers. I think we really do miss Mitch McGovern, and the closest person in the reserves at the moment is Luke Parks. His intercept marking has always been a strength. His weakness has been getting the ball to his smalls, and he's done it. And I've created this for you because I'm a nice guy. This was him at the weekend. So a lot of touches, as you can see, in that traditional intercept role. So I really like that change, a massive upgrade on Plowman based on form. I think the difference with Plowman and Parks is Parks can play football. Plowman's just a defender. Parks is the modern day guy.
Yeah, I think Parks, when he came in, was a bit of a negator, similar to Plowman, but he's clearly gone away and worked on the offensive side of his game. That intercept tall position has always been a question mark for us because it was always supposed to be Caleb Marchbank, right? So I'm hoping that Luke Parks can come in and impress and make the most of it and solidify him in this side, because I know he's a fan favourite. Everyone likes how he goes about it. He just needs to carry it across into senior footy. And let's be honest, at the moment, Port Adelaide's they're pretty bad in up front this year. They're last for scores, last for goals. So he should have an opportunity here to show off his wares, because all their big names are out of the midfield, with the exception of like Robbie Gray, who's coming back. He's going to be playing on, is he going to be playing on Jeremy Finlayson or Mitch Georgiadis? Like, he should be able to find enough of the ball for us to rebound really strongly. And as long as he can contest, bring the ball down, or intercept and then feed off to Sard, Williams, Doherty, the guys that are in really good form, we should be able to generate some scores through rebound 50s this week. I'm hopeful.
No, I'm with you. And I think that the big interesting stat for people at home following along, me and Let Dog anal about stats, is for being 4th and 6th in inside 50s and possessions inside 50, they're 17th in shots at goal. and scoring opportunities. So they've been very wasteful. So that leads me on to Allir. I know a lot of Carlton fans have memories of Allir. There's something about him, isn't there? But one thing I want to make sense is that you've got to remember Carlton last year had 2 top 5 players in intercept marks in Jones and Wheaterin. And that's all well and good. It just means you're stopping inside 50s and you're pegging them at the highest point. If you've got nothing to kick to, you've got a big problem because it's just intercept marks and it looks good. And that's the one issue that even without Allir, they've had issues with Port. They've managed to stop their inside 50s against and handle them. But the problem is they haven't got anything to generate it with. So it's an interesting one. Allir, what you guys at home watching, you guys and girls, and what about you? What do you think the number one thing is in this team to stop Allir?
I mean, stop kicking the ball to him, Pom. Every time we've played him in the last few years, he's been our 19th man. We've had a better conversion in terms of kicking efficiency to Allir than any of our forwards in the past 20 years, mate. So as long as we stop kicking it to him, we should be fine. Because I know he's in the All-Australian team and I know he can find space really well. But our biggest issue was just that previously we've been awful at going inside 50 and we've literally just floated kicks up and allowed him to go for them. I think long penetrating kicks are what we need to find. We need our tools to bring the ball to ground. I imagine that's partly why Tom De Koning's not in the team because he hasn't been doing that. I'm hoping with Matt Owies and Corey Durden and Jack Martin, we'll talk about him, I'm sure. We just need to get it near our tools, deep enough that those guys can work at ground level. And yeah, it's pretty simple. Stop kicking it to Allir. I mean, there's a few comments here, Pom. I don't know where to start. There's Jack Martin. How is he still in the team? There's Paddy Dow. How is he not in the team? And there's Liam Stocker. How is he not in the team? Which one do you want to start with?
Well, we'll start with Jack Martin because it leads on well to Adrian's one of many who have asked this question as well. But I think it leads me on to a way of answering 3 questions in one. So well done, Adrian. We love it. I think Martin is a key to stopping Allir. So when Allir played against Carlton the last 2 times, his intercept marks have been abnormal. And our average hot zone for inside 50s is around the 49 metre. So that is just inside 50. So Carlton the last 2 weeks, absolutely been destroyed by going shallow. Martin is one of the big things that are responsible for that because him as a half-forward flank, he's meant to be that guy kicking in. If you watch how Voss plays, particularly the VFL, it goes half-back, wing, half-forward, into Benny Crocker in the goal square. And that's how we transition. Carlton missed this kick, and Martin, even though we had a lot of marks last week, the majority of them were uncontested marks, not where you want them. He fumbles on that wing. So I think Martin probably is very lucky to get a gig. But I will counter it and say the only person I think who can replace him in the VFL, and I think he's stiff not to even have a chance, is Mr. Kemp. Kemp has been playing this role in the last 2 weeks, has been sensational. But it leads me to the 2 ins. So to answer another question that was lost, Cottrell and Nooms and how that works. So if you look at Cottrell here, Cottrell has literally been Lockie O'Brien in the reserves. Yep. So in the VFL, he has been Lockie O'Brien version 2. And what is really interesting is he keeps his shape incredibly well. And he's allowed to go forward because Parks is behind him and offers that real defensive reliability. And you find that they've got a tall marking half flanker like Jack Martin. So Jack Martin would be where the arrow is and Cottrell overlaps. And that's where his delivery is the best. And the next guy I'm going to show you is Jack Nooms, who is basically, I think, Setterfield on the wing is an Audi version of this bloke. He is everywhere. This guy is your defensive pressure. Quite often he goes and does the hard work. So I think moving forward for Carlton, that is going to be a huge one of why he's brought these players in. It gives him an option because that is Carlton's weakest area. Allir is a threat here, a massive threat, because he looks for them shallow entries, and Carlton have been guilty of that the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, look, I think Kemp, he can't be that far off. I think probably what is keeping Jack Martin in the team, while he hasn't been converting, he has still been generating shots at goals in game, where Kemp in the reserves hasn't really been hitting the scoreboard. At least he didn't on the weekend. Very similar role. I think just the upside of a Jack Martin, he's still very much a cherry on top player. If we're on top, he should be able to contribute some goals. If we're not, well, that's where the question marks start to come from. But we know we do lack some depth in that area. Jack Silvani plays that role as well. So it'll be one to watch. It's an interesting one. I've seen a lot of people asking how he's in the team, and a guy like Paddy Dow isn't. Paddy Dow, we talked about this last week, Pomp, plays a different position. Paddy Dow's exclusively at the moment an inside midfielder. He has been pushing forward in the VFL and kicking goals, but predominantly at AFL level, he's going to be playing in the guts. They've opted to give Will Setterfield a chance to prove himself, and he knows the system. He's been in the team every round this year, so they're giving him the chance over Dow. It's probably bad luck for Dow, but it's also hard to make 6-7 changes a week and remain a consistent football side.
Oh, well, I mean, I think the changes are huge in the terms of the amount. I was not expecting it, to be honest, but I think Riley answers the Dow question, and there's a lot of you in the audience. I think Dow should be in, but I think exactly as Riley says, chances are he probably plays 1 week and then he's out unless he has an absolute blinder. I think that if we're doing that, it's only going to ruin him. When Dow comes in, he needs a 2-3 game sustained point. I think Dow is very stiff. Same with Stocker, but Stock, you've got to remember, had syndesmosis. He did return 2 weeks earlier than scheduled as well to training. So he only played 60% first week, played 92 last week. So obviously that was his first real game. So I really do like that. But another question here that I really like as well is this one here, Jesse Motlop. Jesse Motlop obviously missed last week because for banter he lives with guys who've got COVID. Had a really good game the week before. He will be a guy who's really pressing the claim. And I would say watching what Motlop's doing for the VFL, obviously different standards of football, but you can get a good inclination of what they're going to do. He's playing that always role, really playing that always role. And always is another guy that a lot of Carlton fans had a bit of an issue with last week. So very interesting to see if Motlop kicks 4 this week. Could be a little bit of pressure because that tackle pressure is coming from Motlop as well.
Yeah, certainly will be pressure. I mean, I watched the game on replay after listening to it live last week. I thought Owies was okay, but I think he's beginning to get to the borderline. We'll need to convert a few this week, and if Motlop has a big game, he'll press. I just wanted to flag, I've seen quite a few comments about Liam Stocker's 36 disposals. You and I were talking before the game, Pom. He had something like 12 kick-ins from behind, so you can scrub them off. He was just seagulling for Supercoach points in the VFL, AFL fantasy points. He realistically had 24 touches, which is good, but he's clearly still building that fitness. Not everyone can be Sam Walsh and come back from syndesmosis a week later and have 30 touches a game.
I think to answer it, 24 touches as well is phenomenal from the back pocket. If you exclude his kick-ins, obviously you can't because he had them. I think the 2 takeouts for me with Stocker were, one, he defended incredibly well, but he was loose at times. He was loose with the kick-in, and I do think they're going to err on the side of caution with Stocks and hold him back. We know he's ready to play, and I wouldn't be worried, but I think that's a big thing for me. I know Tim says you'd play him in the middle, but for me, we can't judge him as a midfielder anymore. He's playing full-time in the VFL as a backman. And as much as he was a midfielder as juniors, I've always seen the benefit of playing him down the back. If those who remember when we did the draft preview, I did say I could see him starting off as a back pocket and moving up in 2 and 3 years. I think he's done it. And that would answer the question as well. I've seen some few comments about Cottrell as well. I don't think he is AFL class. I hope I'm wrong. But one thing I will say is if I was Voss right now, our ability to escape contests statistically and in-game is absolutely garbage. And Gold Coast beat us because they took the corridor away. Hawthorn nearly beat us because they took the corridor away. And if the Doggies had worked it out before quarter 3, we would have lost that game because they took the corridor away. So he obviously needs options on the wing. And the benefit of no Lysett there, he doesn't need to play 2 ruckmen because Hayes is going to be doing that job full time. And Pitternet should be able to bully him because he's an experienced ruckman. So now's the time to maybe try that. Have a big rotation there and go, I need width. And if Cottrell and Nooms can play 75% the level they did at the VFL, no disrespect to O'Brien as much as I like him and Setterfield, they'll piss all over him. They'll piss all over him because they naturally stay wide and they have naturally performed. What are your thoughts on that and comments? How do you see that?
No, look, I agree. I don't think Jack Nunes and Matt Cottrell come in as players with big egos. I think if Voss tells them to keep their width and keep their shape, I think they're going to keep their width and they're going to keep their shape. Jack Nunes is experienced enough to know what his job is and to execute it. And Cottrell seems to have the drive or the determination to just kind of do what he's told. Yes, sometimes he can get lost because I agree. I don't think he's totally AFL standard, but he's done his role and he's earned a spot in the team. So we just got to back him in. I'm interested to see what we do in the midfield to oppose Port Adelaide's midfield, because while they haven't been very good this year, they still rank up there for disposals and for centre clearances and all that sort of stuff. Zach Butters, I think, is one we're going to have to watch. I think with Ollie Wines out, he's going to, and Robbie Gray and Jeremy Finlayson returning to their forward line, he's going to push up into the ground, and he has the capability to really open up a game, get a lot of disposals, and then also go forward and kick goals. So I'm interested to see if we're going to run any defense at all in the midfield, or if we're just going to go, hey, head-to-head, 2 contested beast teams. We'll see who comes out on top. Don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Pom.
Well, I mean, I love Butters. He's my favourite character of South Park. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting because when you actually look at the data of Port Adelaide, it's horrendous, but it's not horrendous. I know that's a contradiction, but you see where the obvious issues are. At the moment, they've got no forwards. Do you know what I mean? At the moment, and it's a little bit like Carlton. Harry Mackay was the 7th most targeted forward in the AFL last year. Dixon was 6th. So it shows how important it is to the system. And we're fortunate now we've got Kerner. So there is a bit of diversity, but it's still very one-dimensional. And that's why it's easy to pick off. Same with Port. They've lost that cog. It's incredibly diverse. And the thing they've got is a bit like when TDK's forward. And I've seen a few comments about TDK. He doesn't bring it to ground to his smalls. And that's what's strong at Port. That's what's strong. When it's on the ground, they're very clever. Their forwards don't do that. Something they're learning to do. So I'm not really worried about their midfield. I'm worried about where I am really worried about with Carlton is if we start going out wide and we can't get it deep and we can't get it in the shells where we saw against Richmond, and it's not right, that pressure drops off, it could be a disaster. And that's where Carlton have got to really, really improve. And you need Nooms and Cottrell as deep as possible. We need them about 60, 70 out. Like Michael says, can they improve the delivery? Based on their VFL form, yes. Both of these two, for me, have been incredibly improved, particularly Cottrell. His kicking has improved a lot, but it has to be deep. I want them delivering it in at 60, not 70, 80.
Yeah, it has to be deep, it has to be kicks. It can't be handballs, loopy handballs over the top, which we've talked about quite a bit, because that has been creeping into our game. We're not getting the same drive off the back of sort of centre bounces or ball ups in the middle of the ground. The first couple of rounds, we were getting the clearance. It was going Cripps, Hewitt out the back to one of Sard or Doherty, and we were surging forward that way. As the last couple of games have gone, that's been cut off. And you're right, Pom, our entries have become shallow. We absolutely must must go deep with these guys. And I think that's why we've also seen Sam Walsh named on the outside. He's clearly still not 100% despite racking up the touches. We need his smart kicking, and we need it really bad, and we need it to return really, really quickly. We need him to be the one when Nunes or Cotters isn't on the wing. We need him to be the one setting us up with Jack Martin to go inside 50.
Mate, spot on. And I think when you look at their midfield contingent, you've got what? We know these guys are good. You've got what? Butters, Boak, Drew slots through there. They break the glass in case of emergency, and they throw Gray there at Sturgis. On paper, Kennedy and Hewitt should handle their bigger guys. And I think this is going to come down to Walsh. And I share the sentiment in the audience. Why is Dow not there? Because I really feel that if Setterfield is there, which I presume is so Walsh goes a bit more inside, and Kennedy struggled last week with the expectation and got way too far behind at stoppages. I think that gives Setterfield the chance to go on the ball a bit as well and bash some heads. I do think this would have been the game I would have brought Dow in on the site of. I don't think there's a match for him when you've got Shearer and Walsh. I think that would have been a huge problem for Port, and he may have been the beneficiary, like Kennedy has been the first two rounds, by having Cripps just taking the piss with Hewitt. So I think it's an opportunity missed. I think it sets the standard, though. I think Dow is building, but I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. I think it's an opportunity missed.
No, and we haven't really talked about Cripps because, I mean, while he's a big out, I think we have the personnel in the team to pick up that slack. We saw that, there was times last year, Pom, where Cripps was injured or he was injured and playing, and everyone said, we're better off without him, just put him out to pasture for the rest of the year. So we get an opportunity to see that. He should be back next week. Voss has said that. So I don't think we need to cover the Cripps thing too much. I'm expecting us to be able to fill that void. What I'm excited to see, surely this is the time that everyone in the community, everyone in the Carlton community realises the asset that Mark Pitnet is. It should happen. He's coming up against first game of Sam Hayes. He should be able to give us first opportunity at the ball, which we weren't able to get last week with DeConning in against Wits.
Well, it should be a similar thing, but I don't want to be that guy that gives you any negatives. That far be it from me to worry. And big shout out to Carls and Terence in chat. Terence with a little left hook because Terry pumps up Plowman. Don't throw me under that bus though, Terence. But I have got to say, Sam Hayes has, in my opinion, was the best ruckman in his draft class. He was a very good ruckman. And he has been doing well in Sandford. And that warning, Laddens, do you know what I mean? Remember it, because people have chopped that quote up and sent it to me all the time, and I've never had so much egg on my face on this show as that. But I do think that's the big one for me, that he should think about what Wits did, and Wits did the simple things well, dragged it to his feet. TDK didn't look out of his depth. He looked like he was swimming in the seas of Uranus. That's how out of depth he was in. And Wits just did the smart thing. And that's what Hayes is. Hayes is a more wispy type wing ruckman he's the modern day ruckman. If Pitnet uses his smarts, he drops that at his feet. He says, Hewitt, Kennedy, whoever's there, get around my feet and let's bully them that way, because you will tire him out quickly. But he is a very good footballer, and if that's going to be interesting, because Pitnet is top 5 in the league, hit-outs, top 5 hit-outs to advantage, interesting hit-outs as well, because Carlton were top 3 in the comp for it until last week, and we're now 11th. It just shows you how quickly stats change in one game. So I'm expecting a captain's performance from Pitnet in leading by example and being like, I'm the big dog now, let's dominate and let's see what happens. But I'm confident he should batter him.
Yeah, he should. And look, Sam Hayes can have a good game. We just need Mark Pitnet to have a better game. One thing I want to see this week, Pom, I don't want Zach Williams, Adam Sard, and Sam Doherty to be our 3 best players, because if your 3 halfback flankers are your best players, you're in a lot of trouble. We saw that last week. I'd love them all to have good games, but I do not want them to be best on ground. I need our midfielders and our forwards to be best on ground this week. I'd love to see Sam Walsh back at his best. I'm really excited for this one, Pom. Are we going to do our tips?
I was going to say, everyone in the audience, we'll do it differently this week. I want your best on and your scoreline tip. So over to you, Let Dog. Give me your best on and your scoreline tip.
Best on, I'd love to see. I think Jack Silvani's going to kick a couple of goals this week. I think he'll present well. He'll be a marking target up forward. He's going to be my prediction for best on. He's going to give us a lift when we need it. And I'm going to tip us. I have to tip us on the channel, don't I? I'm going to tip us by 3 goals, 18 points, despite the fact that Port Adelaide have never, ever gone 0-5 to start a season. But I think we should just not think about that. We're going to break that record. We're going to set that record.
Mate, I love it. I think Carlton by 21. I like 21. It's a good round number. And I'm going to go with best on ground, Charlie Kerner, kicking double figures this week. I reckon. Oh. I reckon Charlie's going to batter really, really here. I reckon by quarter time, Carlton fans will put their worry box away because Charlie Kerner is going to be showing the Sudanese Adonis what happens when you play against the Torquay Adonis, and that's you get battered. Big game from that. We've got loads in the chat. Before we go, obviously, just remember you can follow the great Let Dog. He does a wonderful podcast. It should be at the bottom there, called Jock Reynolds for all your fantasy needs and also just a bit of banter. You can follow me as well, Pommy and Oz, in all major things. But let's be honest, Carlton, big game this week. Come and watch the watch along if you're not going to the game. Enjoy your Easter, a wonderful time of year where the Muslims celebrate Ramadan. We've got the Christians doing Easter. We've got Passover as well in the Judaism community. The one period of the year where we all really are at peace and relax. So let's hope it's a peaceful weekend for you and your kin. Carlton by 21, don't worry about it. And until next week, we'll see you next week. Much love. Go Blues.
Go Blues.